Bruchim Habaim, welcome. This week's Parsha is Parsha Shoftim, and I'm studying Perek Kaf Aleph, chapter 21, verse 1, basically to the end, to verse 9, the end of the Parsha, and we learn about the Eglah Arufah, the calf that basically has it says, and they shall break the back of the calf's neck. And so we read about it in verses 1 to 9. And I'm just going to read through the chapter quickly to help us have an understanding exactly of what's going on. So it says, if a corpse will be found on the land that Hashem your God gives you to possess it, fallen in the field, it was not known who smote it or smote him. Your elders and your judges shall go out, and they shall measure to the cities that are around the corpse. It shall be that the city nearest the corpse, the elders of that city shall take a calf of cattle, which no work has been done, which has not been pulled with a yoke. The elders of that city shall bring the calf down to a firm valley, which had not been worked, and has not been sown, and they shall break the back of the calf's neck in the valley. The Kohanim, the offspring of the Levi, shall approach for them. For them has Hashem your God chosen to minister to him and to bless with the name of Hashem. And according to their word shall be every dispute and every plague. All the elders of that city who are closest to the corpse shall wash their hands over the calf whose neck was broken in the valley. And they shall speak up and say, our hands have not spilled this blood, and our eyes did not see. Atone for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed. O Hashem, do not place innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel. Then the blood shall be atoned for them, and you shall remove the innocent blood from your midst, for you shall do what is upright in the eyes of Hashem. Now, according to the procedure of the Eglah Arufah, the Kohanim are to implore God, as it says in verse 8 here, atone for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed. O Hashem, do not place innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel. Then the blood shall be atoned for them. Now, from this verse, it's apparent that the murdered victim is somewhat innocent. And furthermore, in an earlier biblical statement to be uttered by the elders, there's an indication that the people collectively need atonement and might actually have been accomplices to the murder, as we look back in verse 7. As it says, our hands have not spilled this blood, and our eyes have not witnessed it. Now, the Chinuch 5:30 explains, in other words, the slain man did not come into our hands, whereupon we sent him away without provisions. Our eyes did not see him go out of the city, whereupon we let him go without escort. And so I'm actually reading from a commentary that was passed by a friend to me, by Victor Bibi. And it's interesting because he says he links this with the innocent murder. Who is the innocent one murdered? He says it's none other than Mashiac ben Yosef, who is murdered, and his murder is unresolved. The collective people of Israel, including those who left Egypt, are unidentifiable, but must take responsibility for the murder. The procedure of the Eglah Arufah, the beheading of the heifer, in all its details to rectify our collective guilt concerning Yosef HaTzadik and to reawaken the life of the descendant of Mashiach ben Yosef. All of this must be done as a precursor to usher in Mashiach ben David and the final redemption. So I'm just going to read a bit more of this and add in some things that I've uncovered myself, and to just bring more of this remez to Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, back in Bereshis, chapter 45, we are actually initially made aware of the mitzvah of the Eglah Arufah, as Yosef intends to communicate something to Yosef by sending agalot, the wagons, as it says here, Agalot. He sent wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him. Then the spirit of their father of Jacob was revived. And we see in this, in the word wagons is very similar to Eglah. Okay, and so what does Rashi actually say about this? He says, quoting from verse 27, it says, "And they related to him all the words that Joseph had that he had spoken to them, and he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him. Then the spirit of their father Jacob was revived." And it says, Rashi says, Joseph gave his brothers a sign what topic of study he was involved in when he separated from Yaakov. In the passage of the calf whose neck is broken, talking about our parsha. And this is why it says, and he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent. And it does not say that Pharaoh had sent. So we see here that Joseph was actually studying the last time with Yaakov about the Eglah Arufah, which is amazing. And it says that Yaakov was revived. And this is where it says in verse 28, and Israel said, there is much, my son. There is much. My son Yosef still lives, which is Od Yosef B'nai Chai, which actually is the numerical value 316, the same numerical value as Yeshu, Yud Shin Vav, which equals 316. Interesting. And so Rashi, he's actually citing from the Midrash, and the Midrash serves as a code to understand what exactly is behind the mitzvah of Eglah Arufah. And it is and was to offer atonement to rectify an unresolved murder. Yosef is considered dead by Yaakov as a result of being cut off from his father or life force by the collective children of Israel. He sends the Agalot, the wagons, to revive Yaakov, who declares that Yosef is now alive. And so this arouses Yaakov to reunite with his son Yosef. And the initial reference of Eglah Arufah, particularly here, is to inform us of its power to unite the aspect of the father with the son. This will serve as a prototype of the future redemption via Mashiac ben Yosef. Now, there exists in the spiritual worlds two parallel arrangements of structures or channels that send forth sustenance below. And this is the secret of what is written in the book of Koheles 7:14. What exists in holiness exists in its parallel form in unholiness. Each structure has three upper channels, which are referred to as the head or the rosh of the system, along with seven lower channels, which are referred to as the body or goof of the system. And these systems are competing when holiness pervades. That it is a sign that the rosh or upper three of the side of holiness is unified with its body, goof, or lower seven channels. When there's a separation between rosh and goof of the holy structure, this is indicative that there is a death or halal space between them. It's interesting because that word is right here, mentioned in chapter 21 of Parsha Shoftim. If the corpse will be found on the land that Hashem your God gives you, possess it, and it's fallen in the field, halal. All right, and it's interesting because this can mean a death or space. This releases the life force through which the competing side of unholiness is nourished and can establish itself thereby as a unit, complete with its own rosh and goof, the head and the body. Now, what's more interesting is I have my Siddur here, the Avodat HaKodesh from the Ari, an Ashkenazi translation, in here when we actually pray for the building of Yerushalayim, it says Yerushalayim ircha barachamin tashuv v'tishkom b'tocha kasher debarta uvnei ota b'choro b'yameno binyan olam v'kisei David. And here, right here, he inserts that we should have kavana to pray that Mashiach ben Yosef lives and not dies at the hands of the wicked one. And in the Talmud, Masechet Sukkah 52 notes that Mashiach ben Yosef is to die. The Zohar Kiteseh delineates the reason for this is namely it is due to the collective sins of Israel of Avodah Zarah when led by Yerovam ben Nevat, a descendant of Yosef, they sinned via the Agalot that were set up in Beis El and Dan. And this was similar to the sin of those who were redeemed from Egypt in the sin of the Eglah Zahav. It is apparent from the Zohar that the sin of the Eglah is related to the attachment and unifying of both the male, the shor, and female chamor, negative has. As actually I have a video that I've done in the past on the Eglah Zahav, and when it says Ele, these are your gods. Why is it in plural? These are your gods, not this is your God, because it's actually referring to the Eglah Zahav, the golden calf, is not just a golden calf, but it's actually an ox, shor, and a donkey, chamor. And the leaders sin claimed this in plural, which is two spiritual forces. And this form of idol worship is a reenactment to some extent of the sin of the brothers. In both cases, Yosef, the holy aspect of shor, the ox, the embodiment of the side of holiness as it relates to the body, the goof, was separated from his father Yaakov, who was an embodiment of the Rosh, of holiness. The latter is depicted by his name, the Israel, for me is the head. And this is apparently what Yosef was telling his brothers. Is my father, or the Rosh, from the side of holiness, still alive? And this parallels the halakhic inquiry in the Talmud of Shabbat 75. If one removes the head without intent to murder, should he not be considered guilty? Hence the responsibility remains with them to rectify. With the separation of the head and the body, the life force is removed and given over to the structure of holiness. So I have Sukkah 52 here for the source, but now the tikkun of Eglah Arufah. The only way to reconnect the head and body of the side of holiness will be to reestablish them with the laws of Eglah Arufah, which includes beheading the aspects of unholiness to extract holiness and return back to its proper side. A murder has been committed, and the result from this, the collective sin of the inhabitants of the city, they separated through their transgressions the Rosh from the goof, from the system of holiness. This resulted in the death of the Halal, a space created between the head and the body, appearing as the fallen corpse found on the ground. And the initial stage of reconstruction of the head to body is to establish the upper three channels within the system of holiness. And the Ari writes that first, the Zekinim must be aroused. The elders, they represent the first channel, called Arachanpin. Next comes forth the judges, who manifest the next two channels of the head, called Abanima, and they are charged with establishing the next six lower channels, the levels of the goof, called Midot, or measurements, as the Torah requires them to measure the distance of the city, which represents the final channel of Malchut. Once the structure of holiness of Rosh, the upper three, and the goof, the lower seven, have been established, they are charged with removing the head from the body, from the side of unholiness. And they must take an egel, which represents the negative spiritual side of Avodah Zorah, which had been nourished from the murder. Through its decapitation, the Rosh of the side of unholiness would separate from its body, thereby releasing holy sparks or life force that rightfully belong to the side of holiness. This represents the atonement of Israel, and especially the inhabitants of the city, for the unresolved death. Now, in Sota, Masechet Sota 13a, we read about the secret of the removal of the head of Esau, and which occurred at the gravesite of Yaakov. And this is the method to extract the sparks that serve and belong to the side of holiness. As embodied by Yaakov and Yosef, this severing of the head of evil serves as a precursor in establishing the nemesis of Esau, who is the Mashiac ben Yosef. The term halal, which literally means corpse, also as a reference to the space between the body and the head. The Mishnah Sota 45 intimates that the body and head of the murdered victim had parted. The rabbis assert that they must be brought together to realize the benefits of the Eglah Arufah ceremony. Once the structure of holiness has been reestablished, Mashiach ben Yosef is awakened, and it will usher in the final redemption with Mashiach ben David as king. Now it's interesting that we see, I've done a video on this as well, but Hushim is the one that actually knocks off the head of Esau. And Hushim is a play on letters, because when you rearrange them, it can spell Mashiach. And what's interesting is Esau's head rolls into the grave with Yaakov. You see, the body of Esau is a mess. Masechet Avodah Zorah says that the Edom will be destroyed. And there's a question from the rabbi that says, does this mean that all of the descendants of Esau will not even have a chance in Olam Haba? And the other rabbi replies and says, only those that act like Esau. And you see, and extracting the holy sparks from Edom and bringing them back to redemption. This is the hint that the head is actually kosher. The head is high. It's the body that it has sparks in it that need to be redeemed, but there's also a mess. And it's interesting because Yosef is in Mitzrayim, but he was kosher. He looked kosher, and this is the secret of Mashiach ben Yosef, who is hidden within the nations. Now, there's something else interesting in our parsha. It says we're back in chapter 21 of Devarim. Your elders, vayatsu zechnecha, your elders, vashiftecha, and your judges. Vashiftecha, what's interesting is this can be split up. The shin, pei, and the vav equals 386, which is the numerical value of Yeshua. And then you have the tet, yud, and kaf, which actually equals 39. What's interesting about 39? There is 4 ways of spelling out the name of Hashem, Yud K Vav K. The Malui, which equals the 72 name, 63 name, and 45 name, and 52 name. And when you spell out the letters in full, you will actually come to 39 letters. But there's so much about the 39. The 39, we do, there's 39 malachot that are forbidden on the Shabbat. But 39 is also the numerical value for the word do, tal, which actually is connected to resurrection. As we read in Isaiah 26, verse 19, it says, for your dew is like the dew on the fresh growth. You make the land of the shades come to life. And this is a hint that this is all about resurrection. Oh, let your dead revive. Let the corpses arise, awake and shout for joy. As we see, tal equals 39. And there's so much more deepness of this word tal that alludes to, well, we'll just say deeper things. It's also interesting that Eglah is very close to Goel, redemption. And this is about redeeming and atonement. And we read in Psalm 80, verse 13, why did you breach its wall, so that every passerby plucks its fruit? Wild boars gnaw at it, in verse 14, and the creatures of the field feed on it. And we see here in verse 14, the boar, chazir, meya'ar, and the ayin here is floating. And what is this all about? Well, the ayin is suspended as though it were written with an aleph. If Israel is worthy, the enemies are like the beasts of the river, which have no strength to climb out upon the dry land. But when retribution is decreed upon them, he grows strong as the beast of the forest, which destroys and kills. The boar of the forest is Esau, as it is written in Daniel 7:7. I have the Chazam cipher here. And he explains that Chazir is symbolic of the Roman Empire that falls into an entirely different category. And so Rome is a beast which tramples its prey with its feet. Like I said, Eglah is very close to Goel, but we have an Ein here, an Ein floating. An Ein actually is the numerical value for 70. And 70 is the numerical value for Sod, which means secret, but also can represent the 70 nations. As the Vilna Gaon says, the 70 nations of the world are divided into two groups of 35. Esau heads one group and Ishmael the other, similar to the words of the Ramchal. And so we see the 70 nations. And it's interesting because I showed you how the Ein is floating, but we also were talking about Mashiach ben Yosef and how even Yaakov says, my son lives, and how it's the numerical value of 316 Yeshu, who was actually given over to the nations, and his innocent blood was spilled. As it says in Matthew 27, verse 4, I have sinned, for I have given over innocent blood. And this is exactly what the Eglah Arufah is talking about. As some commentary from Mashiach Sanhedrin and Yerushalayim, our pasuk referring to the murderer says, Teva'er, you shall destroy the innocent blood from your midst. A form of the same word is used in the pasuk describing the death penalty of Zomimim, the witnesses who planned to have someone executed for murder. You shall destroy evil from your midst. A Gezerah Shavah connects the two pasukim, teaching that just as our pasuk discusses a case where the calf is beheaded, so too the execution of the Zomimim witnesses is done by beheading them. And so this is very mysterious. And from the Ramchal, the Ma'amar HaGeulah, the secrets of redemption, the Ramchal quotes Isaiah 63 when it says, who is this that comes from Edom? Yeshayahu 63:1, Isaiah 63:1. This is the Zadik, and he is Mashiach ben Yosef. Be aware that the Shekinah rests in the place of the Mashiach ben Yosef will return, and his core root will become strengthened. Then he will go to Batzra, and there he will tread the winepress to exact that which is befitting. And you can see this exact same words in the book of Revelation. And you see, this is Mashiach ben Yosef. Who is this that sits at the gates of Rome? Go and ask him. It's Mashiach ben Yosef, Yeshua HaMashiach. I hope you enjoyed the study. If you have, feel free to comment. Let me know what you think. And Shabbat is approaching. May you all have a great Shabbat. The high holidays are approaching. May we all be inscribed in the book of life. And on that note, Shalom.